Hello and welcome everybody to this vectornator tutorial. My name is Sandra Staub. I'm an illustrator and graphic designer based in Zurich, Switzerland, and today I'm going to show you how I used vectornator to create a beautiful pattern that I then printed onto a bandana, which I'm going to sell as merch in my shop. So I hope you're ready. Let's get started.
Let's start with the basics. You need to know what color and shape your bandana is. I have picked a navy blue square shape. Okay, yeah, this just looks like a blue marine square, but still, I can use this as a reference when I place my design and I can get an idea of what my final product will look like. Contact your supplier and ask them for a product photo so you can use it as a mock-up. Also, make sure you ask them up to what size they can print your pattern to prepare your artwork accordingly. Alright, next step. References. So, when talking about where this pattern came from, here in Procreate, I have this stack of patterns. One piece of advice that I can give you, I personally always like to start with easy shapes so I can get into the flow. This kind of tricks me into being productive, especially when I feel the so-called fear of the white canvas creep in. So I start with something familiar, which are these basic patterns here. They're very simple and perfect to get started. Using the symmetry tool, just start drawing some basic shapes that you usually like. Like for me, it's these drops and leaves. And this is how this pattern came to life. I started with the eye, which is a symbol that I use quite often in my body of work. I use a lot of drops, I use a lot of circles and these flowers, and I just kind of observed what small elements I usually go for, what harmonizes with each other, and I bring them all together. You can either create your design in Procreate or directly in Vectornator. But as you know, my process is first pixels, then vector. So let's jump into vectorizing. So here we are in Vectornator. You might think to yourself, oh, but the design is already done. However, in order for it to be printed well and with defined edges, I'm going to redraw it in vectors, which is something that I do a lot with my illustrations. I don't consider myself a pixel or a vector artist because I don't think they're mutually exclusive. Sometimes I draw raster works, and for some specific uses, like today, I know I just need vectors to ensure that the final product is high quality. So I'm going to base my design on this pattern. I already prepared the background, which is this dark navy square that covers my canvas. It's on top of my sketch, so let's make this transparent so I can see what's below. I will just lock it so it does not move. And I already prepped a new layer for my pattern. Now I'm picking a stroke width. Let's experiment using the pencil tool. Okay, so we're close to what I envisioned, but maybe I'll make it a little bit smaller. Yeah, that's better. But compared with the lines I laid down in Procreate, it looks like I need an even thinner stroke. The best part is that I don't need to trace everything. What I'll do is redraw this upper quarter here, which I'll duplicate 3 times in order to recreate my entire pattern. Less effort and 100% symmetry. Win-win. Always start with easy shapes. As I mentioned before, that gives me kind of like a momentum. Hold down one finger when drawing or resizing. Okay, now using the pen tool, I'm creating these curved paths here that create the shape of the eye. Starting with the corner, naturally, then tap again halfway, and then tap again in the opposite end. And continue the same process for the lower part. You know me, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so I'm picking up the node tool and adjust some of the handles ever so slightly. Fine-tuning is actually one of my favorite parts. Now to cut the shape, I use the node and scissors tools. Just add 2 nodes here where you want to cut the shape and then select the upper node with the scissors tool and delete it. And I can repeat this again to make it smoother. Let's do it again for the eyelid. Adjust it so it's smoother. The rest looks good. Now for the eyelashes, I'll use the line tool. I try to make my life as easy as possible by duplicating whatever I can. And you'll see what I mean in just a second. Let me just create these tiny circles here. And the teardrops. These are just the tiny details that round up the composition. Tap up top, tap and drag slightly, then tap again. I'm usually a pencil tool gal, but since these lines need to be super smooth and geometric, I find the pen tool a much better choice. Sometimes I love to adjust my sketch in the vectorizing process as well, whatever works better. I use the selection tool to resize here. Nice. Alright, now let's reflect all this on the other side. So select everything you have so far, activate duplicate mode, and move it while holding down one finger. This way it moves on the same line. Then flip it and deselect duplicate mode. And since I also have the eyes as part of my cluster of shapes here, it means that I can align them perfectly. The final Sandra Staub touch is to delete all the duplicate shapes that I don't need. You can see them, the printer won't see them, but I know they're there and they're unnecessary. Design hygiene is super important in my process. The eye is done now. That was easy. So let's do the rest of the small details. So I'm duplicating these small circles to fit this trio here. Speaking of trio, these triangles I just create with the pen tool by tapping once in each corner. Maybe some tiny adjustments wouldn't hurt. The second triangle will be identical, but bigger. So let's copy this one, deactivate duplicate mode and scale it while holding down one finger. And why not? Let's duplicate again to move the little chevron underneath. Let's use the scissors tool again and let me show you why I love using this tool. So if I just add a node and then delete it, nothing happens. We're back to square one. But if I add this node with the scissors tool and then I delete it, this will open up the path. Then I'm resizing it and making it flatter. These circles and lines are perfectly easy as well. Using the oval tool here, of course, duplicating, scaling, all that jazz. For the lines especially, I can show you a nice trick. When rotating them, make sure you hold down your finger on the canvas so you're snapping the rotation every 4 to 5 degrees, which is precisely what I need in this instance. We'll align it with the original circle and we're actually going to stop here because we're only working on the upper part of the design for now. Remember? These leaf elements I'm creating with the pen tool. But for the lines or the veins on the inside of the shape, I'm going to use the pencil tool because I like the organic feel of it. I actually prefer working with tools that have this quality to them, as opposed to the pen tool, which is basically dots, dots, dots. But I do appreciate the benefits that come from it. With a pencil tool, you might need to adjust more depending on the aesthetics you want to achieve. I can just redraw this, or I can just copy it again and adjust it to my needs. And I will not hold my finger down because these leaves are not perfect replicas of each other. They have slightly different shapes. I definitely like the precision that comes with working with vectors. And the fact that you can copy the same shape over and over again and then warp it to something same but different. I'm using pretty much the same techniques, I just show you to finish up the design. A cool trick I want to show you here is when I have such a narrow shape with such pointy ends, once I'm at the top here, I tap on the handles. This changes the node type and, in turn, allows me to create these sharp looking shapes. You might be wondering where I get my inspiration from. A lot of the shapes that I draw actually have symbolic meaning. Circles don't have to be just circles. They symbolize wholeness, unity, and they have a lot of spiritual or magical connotations. Alright, here we go. You can see I drew the entire half here, which means that I can duplicate it on the other side. As usual, I like to select everything, copy, then deselect copy. Very important. Flip it. And I can use my shapes as guide to put everything into place. And then delete. I prefer to spend some extra time copying all these extra shapes that help me align everything perfectly and then deleting them. It's a price I'm very willing to pay, but hey, that's just me. Perfect. Now that we have all this, which is a bunch of stuff, let's recreate the entire design. Just like before, I select it again, copy it again, rotate it while holding down one finger again. Deselect and put it in place. Just like before, we're using the circle as a guideline. Now that this half is done, I just need to copy it one more time and place it exactly on top. I can get a little tricky, but it's okay, it looks nice. Let's do some quality checks. I think it looks the way it should. Let's remove our guides now, since we don't need them anymore. And I go round again to check that all my lines, curves, paths and dots are all in the right place. Looking at the design now, I want to make the lines a little bit thicker actually, which I can easily do from the Style tab. Looks nice, right? Just making sure that when printing, it's not going to be too thin. And now I want to show you how to add that extra pizzazz. I want to create a super cool gradient. It was just so much easier to work with white for now because it gives me a higher contrast. Plus, the gradient should apply to the entire composition as a whole, not to individual parts. Okay, so select everything. You can notice my signature is not selected because it's on a different layer. Let's create an outline from all of this. Then let's use this Boolean operation that unites everything into one shape. Because once I apply color, I want Vectornator to understand that this should be considered as a whole. Go to Style tab, then tap on this color picker window here. Tap on Gradient. Then let's change the color of each teardrop. Right is electric coral. Then left is a super soft pink. In my books, when I have a radial design, I think a radial gradient looks the best. Now I want my light color to be more prominent. And the way to do this is by adding a third teardrop in between. That is the same light pink. And then I can move this around a bit. But then I want the electric coral to kind of come in more abruptly towards the ends. So that's why I'm moving this teardrop more to the left. You can play around with these settings all day. There are literally infinite ways to define your colors, transitions, and effects, which makes this process so fun. I like this. So let's just make my signature match. And with that, I'm finished with the design. Now I just want to add it to my mockups. So let's select every layer here, including the background, then copy. Let's jump into my mockup file that you've seen before. I know it's not very spectacular, but this is the actual image of the bandana. Then paste the layers onto this artboard and place it on top of the bandana in the middle. This gives me an idea of how I want this to be placed. And what I love most about this is that I can send it to the printer because they gave me this image. So they can use it as a reference of how big I want my pattern to be, what the placement is like, and so on. That's really helpful for them, and for me it's great because I can understand if I like the design or not before I actually get a physical prototype. Alright, so I hope you learned a lot today. Hope you were able to follow along because now that the technical part is over, let's jump into the final results. Pow! Here's the final bandana. I absolutely love this so much. I say this about all my merch products, but honestly I will also use or wear them myself. The colors look great, the print turned out just how I wanted and you can style it in different ways. My favorite is around my wrist. Just like this. So check out my other episodes, follow me on Instagram at Sandra Staub for more, and subscribe to the Vectornator channel so you don't miss out on any of my other tutorials. Bye!